What's up, y'all? Steppenwolf Theater's revival of Fool for Love by Sam Shepard is extended by popular demand through March 23rd. The sexy and haunting play has garnered 4 stars from the Chicago Sun-Times and the Daily Herald, which said, "Now is the time to savor the current moment of Steppenwolf returning to Shepard." Fool for Love is on stage now through March 23rd. Get tickets today at steppenwolf.org.
Executive producer Simone Alicea here, and I want to make sure you don't miss your chance to explore the world of James Bond. 007, Inventing the World of James Bond, is now open at the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry and must close April 6th. Get up close to the iconic cars, gadgets, and props from the Bond films. See how real-world science brings 007's adventures to life, from a prototype jetpack like the one in Thunderball to today's Gravity Industries jet suit. Design the perfect spy vehicle, dangle from a steel beam, and more. For tickets, visit msichicago.org.
Today on CityCast Chicago, why is Mayor Johnson in D.C. this week testifying in front of Congress? Who is leading Chicago's Park District moving forward? And can the CTA deliver on their 10 minutes or less promise on some of their busiest bus routes? Joining me to break it all down, executive producer Simone Alicea. It's Tuesday, March 4th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Morning, Simone. How you feeling? How was your weekend?
I'm doing okay. It was good. Got out to see a little theater, did some painting. What about you?
Oh, I did a little bit of theater as well. What did you see?
I got to see Clue at CIBC Theater, which I think this was its last weekend. But it was super fun, tight 90 minutes, lots of slapstick, very, very silly. What about you? What'd you see?
I saw Fat Ham at the Goodman Theater. I believe it's been extended through March 9th. It's been going since January, to which one of the most energetic, fun shows I've been to in the last couple of years. The entire cast had me absolutely dying from start to finish. Shout out to Tremaine, who starred as Juicy. Ronald Connor was in the play. People might remember him from Southside playing Bluto. He starred in 2 roles as both Rev and Pap. It's a loose interpretation of Hamlet. I didn't expect to have as much fun. And shout out to the Goodman, because they never disappoint with their set designs.
Oh, I gotta go check that out now, especially now that it's been extended. For sure, gotta check that one out, I think.
Jumping to our first story of the day, many people may have seen that Mayor Brandon Johnson is in D.C. And tomorrow he'll be testifying in front of a House Oversight Committee about Chicago's welcoming city policies, aka sanctuary city laws. Simone, we forecasted this months ago when GOP Congress people decided they were going to put the leaders of Democratic cities and their eyes on blast by bringing them to Congress to answer their questions. And now that's in front of us. What are we expecting? How's this going to go?
I don't think it's going to be pretty, to say the least. As you said, we've known this is coming for a couple months now, several weeks for sure, and basically all kind of part and parcel with the Trump administration's, crackdown on immigration and immigration raids that have happened in cities like Chicago. This request to come speak before this congressional panel, came before the Trump administration sued Chicago. We are currently being sued by the federal government over these welcoming city policies, which, as a reminder, the welcoming city ordinance in Chicago, what it does is it essentially prohibits law enforcement from coordinating with federal immigration enforcement, sort of allows for, if you have been the victim of a crime, you can go report that to the police, and the police cannot then go and say, oh, this person is undocumented, right? This person is here in the country without authorization. And it generally prohibits city agencies from doing so. So CPS as well, right? The idea behind it is allowing anybody living in Chicago to participate and get the city services that are provided by the city to all Chicagoans, regardless of your immigration status. But of course, the congressional Republicans and the Trump administration have said that these policies, create problems for public safety, essentially that these policies make it difficult to do the deportations and arrests that they want to do.
But they've gone far, far beyond that because they largely paint picture of people as criminals, right? As people being sent over here, not only this, centuries old BS of taking jobs and committing a ton of crimes. And some of the names that are going to be sitting on this panel, people like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, Jim Jordan. These are some of the people who we've seen time and time again use these congressional spaces, obviously not for anything productive, but really to try and embarrass the people who sit in front of them, to further platform their xenophobic and their racist views of migrants. It's trying to get a gotcha moment at the expense of hundreds of thousands of people's security and safety.
Right. This is not a policy discussion. This is not a discussion about governance. Sun-Times DC correspondent Lynn Sweet wrote a column about this and called it, I think, political theater. Right. That is the point of this. It is performance. It is theater to, continue this sort of fear mongering and sort of the just the noise of it all, right? That said, that doesn't mean there aren't real consequences, both for obviously for our immigrant communities in Chicago and across the country, but also political consequences, right? For these mayors and Democrats writ large. So Johnson is in this position of, he is representing in many ways kind of the entire party. In a way that I'm not sure that Brandon Johnson really saw himself or really has positioned himself right in the city of Chicago. In Chicago, has spoken very forcefully against the Trump administration, particularly the immigration policies. And, will he walk that back at all now that he's under a national spotlight? I think it also depends frankly, on kind of how the other mayors position themselves. The other mayors who are going to be testifying, Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, and the mayor from Boston, which I'm just not as familiar with who they are, to be honest. We also know New York Mayor Eric Adams is going to be there. Adams, of course, capitulating and cooperating with the Trump administration on immigration in that city. Will Brandon Johnson find allies in these other mayors? I really don't know. Yeah, I think it's a very tense situation all around.
That's a very good point. And at this time, I love the point you made about him definitely maybe not seeing himself in this position, definitely maybe not having the experience to be in this position of trying to stand in front of a GOP strategy that has been here for decades and decades, attack Democratic leaders in major cities, despite the fact that the data does not prove in any objective way that major cities led by Democratic leaders fare worse off economically in regards to public safety. However, that is the narrative. And unfortunately, 2 years into his administration, whether we're talking criticism from Washington or criticism right here in his own city,
Chicago, right?
People are ready to talk about Mayor Brandon Johnson being naive, maybe green in this job, maybe not ready for this position. And so as much as it is political theater, it is very much an opportunity for Mayor Brandon Johnson to show some leadership, to show his acumen, to show that he can stand in the face of largely unjustified and illogical criticism, because that's what he's going to be facing off against. And I hope it doesn't devolve into him trying to out personality in terms of like throwing shots. I hope it doesn't devolve into that. And he's really able to give off a clear-minded sense of what Chicago's policies have been and what they will be moving forward.
But my question is more to the effect of like, will the rest of the Democratic party and sort of the apparatus of it, will they stand in support of a mayor like Brandon Johnson?
In this moment, in which I think we're having a very polarized conversation in the testimony, I think he has an opportunity to just, all you got to do is not fumble it.
That is a much taller order than I think you're giving it credit for, Jacoby.
I feel you.
Because I think it is a very delicate balance. And so I suppose we'll see tomorrow when this meeting happens.
Executive producer Simone Alicea here, and I'm here to tell you time is running out to step into the world of James Bond. 007 Science, Inventing the World of James Bond, is now open at the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry, and it must close April 6th. I had a chance to catch this exhibit in the fall, and I gotta tell you, it was super cool, and you don't want to miss it. This first ever official exhibition explores the science and technology behind the world's longest-running movie franchise. Get an up-close look at the iconic cars, gadgets, and props from the Bond films, and discover how real-world science helped create 007's on-screen adventures. See incredible Bond gadgets alongside the real-life inventions they inspired, like a prototype jetpack from Thunderball and today's Gravity Industries jet suit. Test your ability to design the perfect spy vehicle, dangle from a steel beam, devise amazing stunts, and more. Get your tickets today at msichicago.org. That's msichicago.org.
Speaking of things Mayor Brandon Johnson has to deal with when he gets back to Chicago, one of them is appointing the heads of some critical agencies in our city. Luckily, last week when Park District CEO Rosa Escardeno announced her resignation, the very next day Johnson announced he was going to appoint 35th Ward Alder Carlos Ramirez Rosa to replace her. In that sense, it didn't feel like this was a big shock to the Johnson administration. Just about a month ago, he said his biggest regret is that he didn't clear out more holdovers from the Lightfoot administration when he came in and put in more allies into key positions. And it seems like over the last few weeks, those have started to pick up. A lot more resignations stepping down. Simone, where are we at right now? Can you remind people who Ramirez Rosa is?
Yeah, so Carlos Ramirez Rosa is actually one of Johnson's major allies on the city council, which, as we know, hard to say how many there are. And council's a bit divided over Johnson. Ramirez Rosa was first elected in 2015. He was the first Democratic Socialist elected to city council, first person who was part of Democratic Socialists of America. He, under Johnson, initially he was Johnson's floor leader and the head of the zoning committee, a very powerful committee in city council. However, there was a confrontation with another alder. It was said that Ramirez Rosa had blocked her from entering the chamber, and words were had. It was a lot, and he was nearly censured over another issue. And eventually, he resigned those leadership positions, and so since then, has flown a little more under the radar. It's interesting, Jacoby. When I saw this news, I was like, I just sort of marked Parks up as just like, and here's another agency we gotta, find a new head for. We got CHA, we got CTA, CPS, a couple of other city departments as well. But I didn't necessarily see how important this could be for the city of Chicago getting a new leader in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, ever since we started this podcast, my appreciation for Chicago's park system has only grown. But since we began this podcast, I've gotten a better sense of just how much potential controversy exists in and around Chicago parks. The CEO who's stepping down now, Escardeno, she was coming in to replace the CEO, Mike Kelly, who was ousted when it became clear that there was a raging lifeguard scandal, one of sexual harassment and sexual abuse amongst young lifeguards, and that this was something that people were aware of throughout the parks administration. And so during the Lightfoot administration, they had to essentially clean house. And so one of Escardeno's big like tent pole things is to like rebuild trust with the city of Chicago. In addition to that, we have talked time and time again about how much our parks are used throughout the year for things like music festivals and summer festivals. Riot Fest over the last few years has become emblematic of this pushback from neighbors who say, we don't have a say in how our park is used. Alders who say, well, this brings jobs and revenue to the neighborhood. And a park district, which largely has been felt like a rubber stamp to some of these big music festivals. If we keep talking, I mean, when we think about the unhoused community in Chicago, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a very controversial encampment erasure in Gumpers Park. The leader of not only 2,000 employees, nearly 9,000 acres, and some of the most beautiful and important green and public space in our city, you know, I think Ramirez Rosa has an opportunity here, not only to grow his own name as a local leader, to potentially grow his salary by almost half, but also giving us a sense of, you know, how do these progressive policies, how do they guide parks moving forward? Will we see more capital investment in repairs at local parks? Will we see greater scrutiny around permits when Grant Park needs to be locked up for 3 or 4 months during the summer? Will Ramirez Rosa be a more critical voice in this position? I think this is actually a bigger opportunity for Brandon Johnson to put his thumb on our everyday experience as Chicagoans in a way that I don't think the coverage has pointed out.
Well, especially because Ramirez Rosa hasn't been able to be as effective in city council as Johnson obviously initially hoped. One thing it's worth noting, Escareno, for her part, has said that, you know, her resignation has nothing to do with the comments that Johnson made about sort of cleaning house and you know, getting new people in.
She said this was the right time for her, that she came in, she set some goals, she accomplished those goals. You know, youth employment improved in parks over the last couple of years. She feels that they've become safer for young people. I believe her. You know, I take her at her word, but the timing is timing,
right? He made the comments. The problem is Johnson publicly made the comments. Therefore, now any resignation,
right?
we have to
months
ask
before or months after.
Obviously, now Johnson has an opportunity, presuming this all goes through correctly, to appoint an alder in the 35th ward, which covers sort of a northwest side ward, covers Logan Square, Avondale, Hermosa, Irving Park, Albany Park. WTW reported that the leading candidate to replace Ramirez Rosa is Cook County Commissioner Anthony Quesada. Brandon Johnson, former Cook County Commissioner himself. Quesada is also a member of the Democratic Socialists and has worked as the 35th Ward Democratic Committee person, which of course is kind of its own party position in that ward. You know, I think that's interesting too, because, you know, I hate to always bring it back to the politics of it all. The stuff you bring up is so important and so material to Chicagoans' day-to-day life. But I do think the politics of it is fascinating because, again, you have a Johnson ally being promoted to this pretty position with some power, over a sister agency. You have this opportunity to appoint a new alder. The other thing that I immediately thought about was the debate over Soldier Field and the Bears Stadium and what's going on with the lakefront and lakefront development. Okay. I don't think any progressive in Chicago is out here thinking that, like, you know, it's a progressive policy to, you know, pay a bunch of taxpayer money to rebuild a sports stadium. However,
millions of dollars.
It is something that Johnson has said he wants to do and that he wants. And if he has an ally in Ramirez Rosa, is that going to make that much easier?
That's a very good point. Johnson said one of his major directives is to make sure parks are a safe place for young people. We have had a debate over the last few years about which parks are accessible to young people. Which parks do we think are for young people? And so I wonder, going into this summer, will Ramirez Rosa take a different approach to things like Millennium Park, for example, than the increased security, which a lot of us have been very much like, this is a headache for a lot of us. This has drastically changed our
Well,
experience of Millennium Park.
but to be fair, that directive, the directive for the curfew, that came from the mayor's office.
I know.
And Johnson had an
I know.
opportunity to repeal it when he got into office and didn't.
I know.
And so, and again, Ramirez Rosa he's a Johnson ally. He's, you know, and also now that he gets this job, right, he owes Johnson a favor. Like, right, he just like, you know what I mean? So like, I wouldn't count on Ramirez Rosa getting necessarily too, I mean, that
I get what you mean.
That said, you know, he's been known as a fiery guy, right? And he obviously has strong opinions about stuff, but I think he owes the mayor now. And I think that makes that dynamic really different.
Before we get out of here, CTA is launching their frequent network bus service on some routes, and they are saying this, y'all, not us. We're not spinning this. They're saying that on some of the city's busiest routes,
on the south and west sides,
that buses are going to arrive every 10 minutes or sooner. Simone, can you tell people what the routes are?
Let's introduce them. So the J14 Jeffrey Jump, obviously, which runs on Lakeshore Drive. Other routes include the number 34 on South Michigan, the number 47 on 47th Street, the number 54 on Cicero, the number 60 on Blue Island 26th, number 63 on 63rd, number 79 on 79th, and number 95 on 95th Street. And those new schedules will start later this month on March 23rd.
I think it is extremely important for CTA to be aggressive in their messaging, to let Chicagoans writ large know we are working our best to hire people, to get things to pre-pandemic levels, to run more buses, more trains on time, less ghost buses, all of those things. But coming out and saying 10 minutes or less, like this is a Pizza Hut commercial, like 30 minutes or less, that feels like a
that
promise.
Is an extremely trackable promise.
Oh, that's the perfect way to say that. That's an extremely trackable promise, especially as your leader, your longtime leader, is no longer in that position. You're with an interim leader. Like, this is bold right now, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, if big if true, right? Like that's kind of my disposition toward it. I mean, right, we have seen improvements on the CTA, especially in the past year.
My personal experience has improved. Yeah,
absolutely. Like trains and buses are running on time with more regularity, certainly than they were in 2023. Definitely than they were, in the height of the pandemic. The CTA, particularly on the bus side, they say they've hired enough bus operators. They are at the hiring level they need to be to actually run with the frequency they need to be running at. That said, to what degree will this be felt by regular users of the CTA, daily users of the CTA, day in and day out? I don't know. And I would be curious to hear from our listeners, how has your experience on the CTA on buses and trains changed in the past year? Again, I have felt like I have caught trains, certainly with more reliability. Even if I see a train pass by me, another one is coming 7 minutes later. I will say the signs are not always correct on terms of when. That seems to more or less mean nothing as far as I can tell. My boyfriend on the flip side, a regular Brown line rider, constantly has problems, and he's someone who's commuting every day. So, I would love to hear from listeners, like, how has your experience changed, particularly in the past year, since it was like the end of 2024 when we were sort of supposed to hit that pre-pandemic service level on rail, and for the most part on buses as well. Text us, give us a call, 773-780-0246.
I want to give a huge thank you to our guest today, executive producer Simone Alisea. Seriously, we couldn't do this without you, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
Before we get out of here, please bookmark our website, chicago.citycast.fm. There you can check out our events calendar, our latest articles, like we're covering some of the other vacancies the mayor still has to fill across city agencies. You can also catch up on old podcast episodes, and make sure you subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago. Now, of course, I can't let you go without some good news. I got two for you. Tomorrow night at Dorian's Jazz and Gumbo is back, featuring Stone Fruit, Ari Burns, Ryan the Person, and more. Check the link in our show notes for tickets. And also, I saw that the Sky are moving their games against the Fever on June 7th and July 27th to the United Center. And I just want to say thank you. Them tickets last year was hella high. And fun fact, the United Center has the largest capacity of any other NBA arena. So, you know, pretty damn cool. As always, we appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.